Oi, oi, hello and welcome to the final day's preview for the Cheltenham Festival. We've made it today for Gold Cup Day. Myself, Dave Young, I'm joined by Will Smith. We're doing this preview for Which Bookie. We've done the 3 days. We're now getting on with Friday. Will, I think you've still got some enthusiasm in you. It is the blue ribbon event of the National Hunt Fit season, and we kick off with a phenomenal race. The Triumph Hurdle this year looks like it's one for the Brits, because I think Lulamba and East India Dock are miles clear of what we've seen in Ireland so far. The Spring Juvenile that Hello Neighbour won looked like the horse was possibly going to win a bit cozier than he did. I know he's got the cheap pieces on, and then you maybe wonder if he saved a bit for himself in the finish. But I thought it was one of those classic examples where you watch a horse race, the jockey's not moving, so the horse must have loads left, as opposed to you look at the horse and think, well, he's not having to be asked for an effort, but he is putting a bit in. So I think he's at least £10 off where East India Dock is on that performance alone. I think the Lamber's Ascot runs as good as what that horse did in the DRF, but obviously Hello Neighbour's come from the flat and then had the runs, whereas the Lamber's trajectory could be much steeper. So don't fear Hello Neighbour, really. And I know a few people are making a case for him. The Spring Juvenile has had a habit of pointing to a Triumph winner, but it's not always the winner of that race that does it. The second, third and fourth have come and won this race after it can be sort of roles reversed, but I didn't see anything in behind that performance to say to me they look like when they come to Cheltenham they're going to progress past them. And again, I don't think the trajectory of the horses in behind are any good. So that's me dismissive of all of those horses' chances. So I've managed to whittle the grade 1 down to just 2 horses, Will. I believe that East India Dock sets the standard, but I also believe that it's not insurmountable for Lulamba to go beyond him. And as much as from a price perspective, I feel like East India Dock, because now he's gone to favourite because of the weakness of Lulamba, the fact he didn't go in the Adonis, and there was question marks about that. But Henderson said he's fine. As much as I can understand why East India Dock could be favourite for this race, I do still think that it's more than likely that Lulamba is going to progress past him. And the reason I say that is purely for the fact that East India Dock, we'll remember him from the flat as well. When Ryan Moore rode him when he got beat by Falak and he was out the back, he just didn't look the same type of horse as he did when he managed to get things his own way. And all the races he's running as a juvenile here, he's been running against rubbish horses. Admittedly, this Triumph might not be too much better, but he's also had things fairly cozy his own way up front. And his jumping's been exemplary, which isn't a negative as such. But if he does find himself getting stuck into a hurdle or getting bunched around by a couple of horses or not getting things his own way, there is a reason to suggest that he might not run up to the same sort of number or at least step forward from it. So I'm definitely being overly critical of East India Dock, but I feel like Lulamba's the one that I want to side with. But it's definitely more... But it's like the visual of what he did at Ascot as well was just like very good, giving all that weight away to Mondo Man. But Mondo Man was obviously doing a lot wrong and still managed to get within a few lengths of him, but was getting all that weight. I think Lulamba's going to be 150's horse, and I don't think East India Dock's going to be much better than the 140's horse that he is now. But you're going to have a difference of opinion in this one, Will. So between us, we can tip up the front 2 in the market for the Triumph, because I'm Team Lulamba and you're definitely Team East India Dock, right?
Well, I am, only because of I'm generally in the team where I've got the facts and figures of something that has been done, and the likelihood is that that could be repeated and or improved upon. So with East India Dock, on what he's done so far, is the standout. You know, he's the standard setter. It sets, for me, it's a very high standard compared to UK juveniles generally, and juveniles, you know, UK and Ireland generally as well, even considering some of the better Triumph Hurdle winners from over across the Irish Sea. Now, the one thing for me is that Lulamba, we don't know how good he is. I mean, there are signs, reading between the lines, that he's very good and potentially could be very, very good. I mean, the market support that we saw for him before he made his debut, the manner in which he won at Ascot, you know, for his first start for Nicky Henderson was, you know, impressive. You had to be wowed by what he did there, and the manner suggested that, you know, they were far from the bottom of the tank with what he did there by any stretch. So it's a race for me now where the prices as they are neither make appeal to me at the prices, because East India Dock is priced up on what he's done. Lalamba is priced up on what he might do, and I think both are fair. I think both are, about right. But because I'm always tied back to, well, East India Dock has set this level with this performance, clocked this kind of time. That's the one. If you gave me a tenner, in my mind, I'd be far happier knowing that I'd backed him at that on the evidence that I've got. If Lalamba goes and improves, great, well done. But I'd console myself more if I backed East India Dock and he lost than I would the other way around.
Yeah, that's fair. So have you got
Doesn't
one at
mean
a
I know
price
who's going to win.
So
Yeah,
there wouldn't be anything at bigger prices though, because
No.
obviously they're priced as they are. Like I said, I think the ones in behind, I feel like they're much of a muchness to me. I don't think there's anything that stands out, and the Irish bar is definitely far lower than it's been in many, many years for this season.
Yeah.
It looks like.
I mean, do you know the one that has clocked a half decent time recently and has just jumped into the reckoning a little bit, only a little bit, would be Blue Lemons for Willie Mullins, who made his hurdle debut at Gorham Park last week, and he did well. He was good, I thought, for a horse that beforehand, he was a miler on the flat. He's by Blue Point. You're thinking, no chance, surely no chance of staying. But maybe the Galileo mare is just bringing out a bit of stamina in that side, and I thought he was sneakily impressive. You're going to need much more than that. Yeah, you're going to need much more than that, though. He was definitely one that, it might be that he runs down the field in the Triumph, and then you may be looking at backing for Punches Down or something else further down the line.
No, but I like that because the bar that's been set in Ireland is like, it's very like, I feel like obviously not any of them could do it, but I feel like most of the Irish horses could better Hello Neighbour in the Triumph. I could be proven wrong in that one. And obviously he does set a level. The quirks about it and the cheap pieces and stuff, they're not preferable things when you're looking at coming towards winning a Triumph. So they put me off. But I remember when Burning Victory took advantage of Goshen's fall, like the hoof hooking incident when he was miles clear and had the race won. But Burning Victory, she had a spin very close to the festival, and then even with like Masborough having that run in the Spring Juvenile, then stepping forward, like the leaps that are Willie Mullins Juvenile when he's literally running them for the sake of it being a prep towards a Triumph, they can make big waves. So yeah, I hadn't noticed that horse, to be fair. I might have a little go on Blue Lemons because I like to get a bit of covering behind, because I'm going to get stuck into Lilamba's the top and the bottom of it. I've got a little bit on at prices where you mentioned he was well supported for this race before his debut as well. And then he was a bit of a drifter really at Ascot, wasn't he? But I'm not on at any sort of fancy prices. I've got a little bit at 6-1 and then that's it. But I do want to get stuck into the Lamba, so I need something as a bit of cover just in case the bubbles burst. So thanks, Will. I'll back Blue Lemons and then I'll go against your advice that if you had a tenner to back East India Dock and somehow I'll blame it on you. Right.
Okay, perfect.
We'll move on to the county handicap hurdle. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you're subscribed. We are doing the handicaps in this preview, but on Sunday, the 9th of March, we'll be going live with a live preview where we'll cover every single race for every single day. Not as much depth in a lot of the graded races because nothing more will need to be said, but these handicaps, when we do get final decks, or at least on the Sunday, we've got a good idea of where horses are going, we'll have a bit more of a concrete opinion. But for the county hurdle this year, Will, we've got a bit of an idea of who might come here and what are the likely types to go and win here. Willie Mullins and Dan Skelton have got 9 of the last 10 between them, so that's always a good place to start. And Kopek Demi gets his next mention for the preview. The fact that he's been well supported, it's based on the fact that it seemingly he's going to get in off of a relatively light mark, and he's the fly in the ointment with the new rule changes that he's 5 runs and he's been bought to win a race at the Cheltenham Festival. I would say, when I've touched on it with the Coral Cup, I'd say this is the least likely race that he would come in my opinion. I think he wants the Martin Pipe as his preference. Coral Cup would be second choice, and then County would be this one, but I could well be wrong. McClory's head in the market after winning at the Dublin Race Festival, and Mark Walsh decided to make way rather than meet of the waters where Rachel Blackmore rode, and Mark Walsh could have ridden that, and I should have known, but I'm over that now. You've got Absurd that won the race last year. Paul Townend, I think it was his only ride in a handicap last year, but Absurd's in it. Ethical Diamond of the same connections and of the same sort of mould. People are talking about that as the profile horse for this, is in it for Willie Mullins. Carnac, that both of us had an inkling could be a Martin Pipe type horse. Although he was 144, we might have still got in, but they didn't even enter him for the Martin Pipe. No. That's how certain they are that Kopek Demi wins that race. But he's semi-interested in here because Storm Heart for Gigginstown hasn't been entered and looked like a horse that people were talking about might be. Even Patrick Mullins mentioned him, so I don't know if he's met with a setback, but that's me mentioning the majority of the Willie Mullinsy types horses. It's going to be difficult when it comes to this race if we're fancying a Willie Mullins horse to not know the jockey bookings, essentially, because if Paul Townend picks ones or picks a horse, it's going to be the most likely winner of the race, I guess. But with that said, Absurd still went off a fair price for the race last year. Lots of people talk about probably being ground dependent and things like that. So where they are fairly defensively priced now, like it's 10-1 top price Absurd, but that's not non-runner money back. I think Nines is the best non-runner money back. You could probably sit and wait for the county hurdle if you wanted to back the winner, couldn't you, Will? Or is there one that's an outlier that doesn't form Willie Mullins or Dan Skelton mould that we should be getting on this early on?
No, I can't see any of that particular ilk. I can see plenty of likely types towards the top of the market, actually, that obviously Kopek, to me, you've spoken plenty about him, don't need to add too much more. McClory might well go to the Moor Battle hurdle, although the same owner has Joyous in that, so remains to be seen. Obviously, Absurd, last year's winner, Ethical Diamond, in the same colours. They're all of interest. Carnique, yeah, definitely of interest. Would have preferred him up in trip. I wonder if that's something they have in mind further down the line, maybe for Fairy House or Punchestown or Aintree, perhaps with him. I think if I could sort of suggest, I mean, it's not suggest a bet right now, but if I knew she was this price right here, right now, that she is 5-6 places come the off time, then Carjaysi, I think, has to be of real interest. She obviously has the Mayor's Hurdle entry, but you'd think maybe with what Jay DeGrugy did the other day, that's going to be Kenny Alexander's main one in the Mayor's Hurdle. And I know a lot of people would have been really disappointed that Carjaysi was beaten by Take No Chances in that Grade 2 at Ascot. But as you said, Take No Chances on her day is a very, very good horse. Carjaysi was having her first start of the season. She was keen. She was held up in a race not run to suit. It was on ground livelier than she would have liked. So I think that could be a really nice run for her to put her spot on for this at Cheltenham. I mean, you look at, she's got a mark in Ireland of 139 on the back of what she did at Ascot. And that should be where the UK handicapper has her, because the UK handicapper has given Take No Chances 140. And you think of Carjaysi finishing within a length and a half of Majborough, within 3 lengths of Sagino, and is now in the high 130s. You know, if those horses were running in here off mid 140s marks, they'd be going off 6-4, wouldn't they? So, I mean, it all depends on how she's come on from that Ascot run. But for me, she looks the best handicapped horse in the race.
Ooh. She's 8-1 non-runner money back for the purpose of this, because obviously, like we're saying there, that if you were to have a bet now, there's a chance that she still goes for the mares.
Yeah.
I mean, she could go off shorter than that, couldn't she? Oh, I'm tempted.
Yeah, it all depends on what turns up and what Millie Mullins runs and what Paul Townend rides.
But she's definitely in there. I think with this race, I can't remember the price of the top bet. I could probably pick them up, but even like Stateman, when he won this one off 6-1 or something, didn't he? Or maybe 7-2, he got backed into at the end. But I just mean that as much as we want to try and get the price, the fear of missing out doesn't need to be as real. I know I like the way you think you got smashed up, but in a race like a county, the Friday, it's Gold Cup day, there's liquidity in the markets, and the bookies want to take a bit of a bet. You don't necessarily have to rush to do stuff. I saw she was 12-1 top price. If she'd have been 12-1 non-runner money back, I'd have been tempted to maybe think she's worth holding a bet. But when 8-1, it's negligible. But I like that one. I did look at her entry as well, to be honest with you, Will, and I didn't want to mention it because I thought she would be Mares Hurdle bound. But the case behind Masborough and Sagino and the fact of her rating screams out, doesn't it, that this could be a good opportunity.
I think for a keen horse like she is, to go over 2.5 miles in what might be a smaller field, as opposed to a county which is going to be run at a breakneck tempo over 3 furlongs shorter, you know, to me, it's a no-brainer in terms of which race is going to settle her best and which is going to suit her best. To me,
let's hope she goes then, Will, and then we can get us stuck in the play spot, and then we can work our way through Gold Cup Day. Happy days. Right, we will move on to the Mares Chase now. Grade 2 event. This is a race that wrecks my head every single year, Will. Just as I feel like I've got a bit of a handle on it, the market moves. Limerick Lace last year was massively smashed in the market. That obviously told. Dino Blue didn't lose much in defeat, I didn't think, last year, considering the ground went against her. It was the first time at the trip, and she still did stay on to run well. And she was relatively solid, I guess, in the market, where Adagori Devassi took a bit of a walk. I mentioned those because all three of those are potentially going to contest in here. Bioluminescence is the other new name to potentially throw in the mix, although I really do think she needs bad ground, and I think she wants further than this trip, but I could be proven wrong. Like Limerick Lace last year, people were saying she'd win a Grand National, and then she's won a Grade 2 over 2.5 miles at Cheltenham. But between Dino Blue and Adagori Devassi, I'm still a little bit bitter about last year with Adagori Devassi, because she'd have done it to every punter, I imagine. She's one of those types of horses that doesn't always deliver on her promise, and she couldn't even hold on for third last year. But the fact that she was quite weak in the market, I say that she still went off 5-2. I don't know. I feel like they maybe knew she was going to run a bad race, but whatever it is, she's been trained slightly differently this year. She came out quite early on better ground and then didn't get the job done there, but they didn't knock her about too much. Willie Mullins said he was really impressed with what she did on New Year's Day when she slammed Limerick Lace, and he said we've been doing things differently with her. And then it wasn't a quick turnaround, but she ran against Dino Blue the last day, didn't she, where sent off favourite, only got beaten in the neck, and people were saying that Paul Townend probably gave her a bit of a bad ride, went wide and gave the race away. She's only £1 worse, or £1 better off with Dino Blue in here. So I feel like I want to make a solid case for her, and I want to make the same case I did last year for her when she was 6 or 7 to 1, that she's an absolute stonking each way bet, but she didn't hold on for third last year. So in some way, shape or form, I will have to have some sort of wager on Adagori Devassi. But Dino Blue, the fact that she did win last time, when she ran behind an Energumene in the Hideaway Chase, giving him all those bits of weight, she was well backed and then was beaten, but I still thought it was a pretty good run. At Christmas, I bet her then, and I thought the money was down. She's going to win, but she had the tongue tie on, and I started to think, oh, maybe she's got a breathing issue. And then she did travel like she was going to be in the frame, and then she did fold tamely. So I thought I'd probably excuse it down to wind, I guess. Then the fact that she has won a race there against Adagori Devassi, I'm now all of a sudden believing that she hasn't got a wind issue anymore, and she is fine and she is sound. And on that basis, if I knew she was 100%, given the depth that there is in behind her ear, I think she deserves to be the price that she is, like a 9-4, 2-1 poke for the race. But she's getting awfully skinny for a horse that has failed to deliver twice this season when well supported. So price-wise, I'm starting to go off her a little bit. So roundabout way, Will. Don't really know what's going to win this race, but I think it's between those four in the market. Only by Night's obviously got that Arkle entry as well. Should be interesting if she did come in here, but it probably is between the big guns, is it? And how do you separate them?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting race, this, because there's a lot of horses potentially, that aren't being faced with their ideal set of conditions, if you know what I mean, in terms of track, trip. Dino Blue, I've always felt is a speedy type. I don't know if 2.5 miles on the new course just finds her out. And I thought Keith Donoghue gave Limerick Lace a brilliant ride last year to just drag her out of her comfort zone far enough out. I mean, Dino Blue, to her credit, she stuck on, but she wasn't able to use that turn of foot that she's got, because Limerick Lace turned it into a staying test. And if she turns up here again in similar form, Limerick Lace, then that'll be what you'd imagine Keith Donoghue, if he rides her, tries to do again. She's had 2 quiet runs this year, Limerick Lace, but I think some of that will be in mind, that they wouldn't mind keeping her fresh for this and the Grand National again, because the Grand National seemed a bit of an afterthought last year. And don't forget, she was backed into favouritism for the Grand National as well. So I think that she's probably a fresher horse this year, Limerick Lace. So look, if the market was exactly as it is come race time and we didn't have any more information, I'd be thinking Limerick Lace is a half decent each way bet here, because Gavin Cromwell's going to have her right, and she's going to go from the front, or at least prominent, and she'll make it a stamina test. And with that in mind, perhaps the other one that might be similar in terms of run style is Telepathique, who I think if you'd said to me, and probably even connections at the start of the season, that you'd be sub 20 to 1 for a mare's chase at the Cheltenham Festival, having started the season on a mark of 103, you'd probably be carted off to good knows where. But she's improved no end, and she's improved for racing. She's a naturally forward-going type, but what she's done each time is just stay that little bit better each time, and her pedigree screams stamina as well. So I think she could be a player at a double-figure price, Telepathique. I think if you asked me to back one horse right now given the season she's had and the form she's in, it would probably be telepathic at the prices each way.
Yeah, good man. And that's the thing with the mares as well, because I sometimes find that I feel like when they're in good form and they run up a bit of a sequence, they're good, but it's definitely burnt me quite a lot in recent years where they actually seem to be quite inconsistent at times as well. Women, eh? Try and figure them out. It's a whole different preview show, isn't it? Right, Will.
I can't add to that, though.
No, yeah, we'll leave it as that. We've already given the viewers too many sound bites to crop up. Right, we'll move on to the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle, the Grade 1 for staying hurdlers. This is a race I love, Will. I feel like I love it because you don't have to really get stuck in early on this one. We've talked about it in the past. There's loads of big price winners in here. I do feel like you need to have something on your radar from a long way out if you're going to find the big priced winners in here. And then you do get the classier element in there as well. The year we had Monkfish, Time Hill, and I want to say Fury Road. I don't know if it was.
Yeah,
the three of those. Yeah, when they were battling in the finish, like that was a year. It was like, wow, this has turned into a Grade 1 novice hurdle. But then it swiftly turned back now, where it looks like 140s horses would be more than worthy of being single-digit prices for this particular race. A lot obviously still depends on the Yellow Clay and Final Demand where they go. It does seem, to all intents and purposes, Willie Mullins hasn't said in the slightest that the Final Demand will come to this race, so we'd have to say he doesn't come here. The Yellow Clay, there is a bit of money behind him on the exchanges, but it's nothing significant. I still don't think they definitely know where he's going, although Gordon has said in every interview this season he goes to the Turners, so I'm still basing myself off the back of that. If the Yellow Clay did come here, I still think he's such a good horse that he would probably warrant being short, and he might go in there. But he'll end up being probably too short a price to have any confidence to bet him, and he might sit back as one of those where it'd just be, I don't know. I couldn't really get involved in him. The ones that are, at the moment though, that are bigger prices, which potentially could all shorten up when those two don't come to this race. The Big Westerner, the mare, I think she needs to find quite a bit in a typical year to win an Albert Bartlett. For all that she's entitled to, she doesn't. I don't think she deserves being the sort of price she is in comparison to some of the other horses that are in here. Wingmen's interesting because same connections as Yellow Clay. They keep running them against each other all season, and Gordon said he'll come here. He thinks he'll stay, which isn't exactly a glowing reference, but again, it's another indication that we'll run Wingmen there because then at least the owners have got a runner, and I can run the Yellow Clay in the race I want to run him in. Feel like there's a bit of that going on. I think it may be owners' disagreement, but Jasmine DeVoe's the one that is starting to jump out at me more and more. I think about him because I forgave him after his hurdles debut. He jumped like a piano, and then he's only a small horse as well. And I thought to myself, well, look, he's entitled to improve being a novice. Lots of Willie's horses weren't jumping well first time out, but then next time out, he wasn't really very good. In the Lawlers and Nays, Paul really did mind him when it was on bad ground as well. But when they put the cheap pieces on him last time, he did seem a bit better in himself. Everything was going a bit slower over those hurdles as well, for all that he was behind like really decent Grade 1 animals in there. I feel like the Albert Bartlett's the type of race that would suit him, and he has got that back class being a champion bumper winner that would see him in good stead. I don't really know whether he's like, even though he's 12 to 1 for this, I don't really know if he's the type of horse that makes me think, Jesus, he's 12 to 1, like you've definitely got to have him in your book, or he's the type of horse that I could just think I could leave him alone, and if he goes and wins, I might just think, actually, I don't mind that I didn't bet him because there was reasons to sort of take him on. But there isn't anything that's at the bigger prices as it stands at the moment that really jumps out to me for a bet. The only horse I could think about at this moment that I would want to strike a bet on is Jasmine DeVoe. But in saying all that, I haven't had a bet on anything in the Albert Bartlett. Although that's not true. I did back Final Demand for the Albert Bartlett. So Willie Mullins, if you're listening, send Final Demand to the Bartlett. But like, it looks a good race. We know you can get stuck into this one nearer the time, Will. But was there anything you already liked this far out? Because I think there was.
Yeah, there is. Jamie Snowden's Wendigo. I put up at, I think it was 20 to 1 into about 14 to 1 now, non-runner, no bet, which is edging towards the realms of the price that it probably should be at this stage. But this race, I mean, it's chock full of horses who the winners of this race previously are, you know, they're bubbling under. They're horses that haven't quite had the right test that they need at this stage of their career. And that's the reason we get so many big priced winners of it, because the form isn't in the book for this particular test. I mean, for these horses, 3 mile, proper stamina test track, Grade 1, there just aren't those races up until this point of the season. So that's why we often find something improving, something at a bigger price, etc. And I thought Wendigo, on what he'd done over hurdles just in a couple of small hurdle races, even before the Challow hurdle, I thought he was a horse that was, had some real ability. And it turns out, that 2 mile Hexham Novices hurdle in October, where he got beaten by Battleborn Lad, at the time, connections were probably scratching their heads thinking, have we gone up to Hexham and got this potential future Grade 1 horse beaten? But Battleborn Lad, of course, won the Grade 2 Novices hurdle at Haydock's Grand National Trial meeting, didn't he? So good horse there. And then in the Challow, he was always just going half a stride quicker than he ideally would have potentially liked to. But I love it when horses, when they are in a race like that and they're going half a stride quicker, and you can see the jockey is always just edging them into the bridle, when they still have something left to hit the line, that to me is a real positive, because it shows they've got the engine in there and they've got the attitude in there. There are plenty of horses that, if they go half a stride quicker for the first half of the race, they've either got nothing left or they don't want to have anything left. Whereas with Wendigo, he hit the line strong. He was clear second best. Would never have beaten the new line over 2 miles, 2.5, 3 miles, 4 miles, whatever. But he'd have beaten the rest comfortably over 3 miles had that race been run over 3 miles. So he to me is a real potential improver up to 3 miles. I quite like him. And Jasmine DeVoe, yeah, he's the other one I looked at. And interestingly, with the Albert Bartlett, there's only 12 hurdles they jump here. And you, of course, have that long run between the second last and the last on the new course there. So as long as he can sort of get over the hurdles previous to that and then just use his galloping in the closing stages, that will help him. And it's the same number of hurdles that he had to jump in the DRF race, only 12, despite going over further. So, look, he's a player, but I do, it is 12 hurdles to jump. If there were no hurdles to jump and it was a 3 mile flat race, Jasmine DeVoe would probably win by half a furlong. But just for me,
and I think
Wendigo each way.
I think that's where I feel a bit with Jasmine DeVoe. Like, I feel like there's enough in you to know he probably won't win it. He might run well or be eye catching, or he'd be the horse that was the unlucky loser in there. But I don't know. It's one of those though, because obviously we're getting this out when we're getting it out. By the time we do the live preview, we'll should have a real good idea of what the fields are going to be. But like, there is a lot that could change in the fact that if the yellow clay does come here, it will even change the type of test that this race is, because he was nice, good and travelling in that Lord of the Nathan. I'm sure he'll be fine further in trip, but where we talk about that long run in, he's the type of horse that if he did come in here, I can imagine they'll just all be at it from a long way out, and he'll just be cantering clear, and then that's when the only way that the horses would be able to potentially get to him is because they're out jumping him or any of those types of things. But please, Gordon, just send him to the Turners, because I think he's got a chance in there as well. It's not even for the fact that I definitely think he'll win the Turners. It's because I want the horse to go to the race that I think he's got the best chance of doing his thing. And he's a good horse as well. But we'll have to see how it comes. They are right when they've got connections and people that are sort of paying their bills, haven't they? If they want to go for a certain target or they want to just win a Cheltenham Festival one. I mean, in theory, if you've got the chance to be 3-1, or it'll probably be shorter than that to win a Grade 1, or you're going to be 6 or 7-1, the logic would say go for the race where you're 3-1 because you've got more chance of winning it, wouldn't it? But
yeah.
In Gordon we trust. In Gordon we trust. Right. On to the big one, the Gold Cup chase, which in typical years could take a little bit of time to go through, because we try and make a bit of a case. We talk about the fact that it is the Holy Grail, and we talk about the fact there's multiple fences to jump, and even though it's like one horse that could be a standout contender, there's loads of horses in behind that you can make a case for. Not this year, Will. We probably could actually spend time going through every single horse and still not take as much time as we normally would in a typical year. But Galopin Des Champs, I don't think there's a person in the world that doesn't think that Galopin Des Champs will win the Gold Cup. It's just a question of if he makes a mistake or something untoward happens, and then something has to benefit from that. Then if you're trying to think about the horses that potentially could benefit from that, the only one I thought after last year's Gold Cup, even with the exception of all the novices that come through this season, only horse I could see that could give him a challenge this year was Jerry Colombe, that did last year. And everything went wrong for Jerry in the race last year, but it's got even worse. Everything's gone wrong for him this year, because he's not made it out ever since the champion chase at Down Raw, where he was poor, not running the Savills, not run after. He's obviously met with a setback. So I think the race is literally just completely and utterly falling apart for Galopin Des Champs. Not that he needed it to be easier, but it's getting even easier and easier for him. And he's such a good horse in the fact that he's not like a horse that needs anyone else in the race to show his ability in his class. You could just put him around on his own and he'd run the same fractions. He do his own thing, and he's still looking absolutely worldly. So I can't imagine a world where he gets beat. I don't want to even think about that. When I touched on earlier, I looked at the betting without markets just to see if I could find anything in there. Nothing in there even got me excited either. So there'd be the type of one. If I can find something, I have to find it nearer the off. But I don't. Nothing's going to change between now and then to change my mind about having issues with horses that are in behind. And even when you look at horses like Monty Star, that could be like a Dower Stayer stuff, you just know that typically in a Gold Cup, he's not really worthy of being in the frame. But I suppose I have to get that out of my head that this isn't a typical Gold Cup. There aren't as many challenges as there normally are. It's not as deep, and it is just everyone playing for second place behind Galopin Des Champs. But how do you see panning it out, Will? First of all, there's no way Galopin loses, is there, bar incident?
No, I don't think so. I think he's proved this season, after getting beat in the John Durkan, which he did do last year as well, he improved through each of his next 2 starts at Leopardstown and won the Gold Cup, mightily impressively last year for me. I think actually probably his best Gold Cup performance in some respects was the year before, because it all went a bit wrong for him that day, didn't he? He got in behind and didn't jump with the fluency that he can do. And that showed the ability that he's got to go and be able to pick up a Gold Cup field and run away from them in the manner that he did that day. And last year was a bit more plain sailing, wasn't it? So, and I think this year will be very similar. I'd be surprised, like you said, barring accidents, God forbid, then I don't see any horse with the ability or potential to improve to even close to his level, really. Like you said, Monty Star, he's a grinder for me. Banbridge is heavily ground dependent. If it came up fast, he'd have a chance. But you just think that Galopin Des Champs will drag it out of him, and that'll be that. Corbett's Cross, never been properly convinced by, I must admit. And then you're going a bit further down. I think the one horse who might be overpriced now in a market without, potentially, I'm by far from cast iron on this, but is L'Homme Pressé for one or two reasons. I've never been 100% convinced he's a guaranteed stayer, and I sort of crabbed his performance in the Gold Cup last year on account of that when he wilted late on. But it turns out he struck into himself, didn't he? I think on that occasion. So you can certainly forgive him not wanting to run up that hill after having run 3 miles and then cutting himself. I certainly wouldn't want to do that myself. And I thought he ran really well in the King George, nice seasonal opener. He won very cosily in the Cotswold. Obviously, the former, that is a million miles away from Galopin Des Champs, but Charlie Deutsch, he never felt was under any inclination that he wasn't going to win that. And you can just scrap the Ascot Chase run, I think, because he as he gets older, he seems to be less and less suited to going right-handed. And Charlie Deutsch probably thought, well, with the Gold Cup 4 weeks away, why am I going to persevere with a horse here who I'm going to have to try and get back into contention over every fence? I'm going to go to the well, give him a hard race. Whether something was amiss, I don't know. But it probably more looked to me like there's no point in me persevering with this. So as a result, he's been pushed out, hasn't he? And you can see why, because there are questions to answer. But I think you could give legitimate answers to some of those questions. So he might be a play in the market without, but that's all it is, really.
Interesting, because I think the 6-1, I think he is with Betfair's the only one I can see price at the moment without market. 3 places.
You'd even want bigger than that, really.
Places. Yeah, that's the tricky thing with it, because at the moment we've still got Grey Dawning in the bet, haven't we? Because as much as they said he won't go here, the way that this race is starting to whittle up, if he's doing bits of work and he seems fairly close to his A game, he'd be in with he'd be definitely filling the frame, even off the back of a bad season. But with this one, I think the reality probably has to be, I know obviously everything has its price and gamble responsibly, of course, but when you look at 1 to 2 about Galopin Des Champs, when genuinely, if you polled the whole of the racing population, 99% of people probably would be close to it. I know it doesn't quite work out like that, but the 1 to 2 about him isn't terrible. It's only because it's a Gold Cup and there's potentially the risk of the extra fences and people thinking stuff like that as well. But he's definitely one that never got involved in early in the season. I got a tiny bit on him after Fattiful did him at the John Durkan, but he's another one that's never been huge a price. And when he gets beat in that John Durkan, you want to see him do something after, don't you? Just to clarify it. But he's one that you could definitely still get in some of those multiples, because if you're getting 1 to 2 about him, it means you can boost up the price of Ballyburn to even bigger, can't you? If you stick them 2 in a double. And then it's very inexpensive then if you're sticking your little small bets that you can get to Gold Cup Day and end up having few quid riding on Galopin Des Champs, which should come to fruition. Going to be phenomenal to see, though.
It would be, yeah. I was looking back through the shortest price winners of the race, and the most recent one that I can see is his best mate for his third Gold Cup was 8-11. That was the SP. So, you know, are you going to get shorter for Galopin Des Champs, or are you going to, you know, I mean,
push him out.
Depends what the kind of week makers had.
They can't push him out, can they? Because there's nothing to take him off.
No, there isn't. You're right. There isn't.
But they might do. But it's one of those, isn't it? There's the definite thing that we like is a fact is there's only so short he could ever get. Whereas, like I said, when you look at those champion chases, when you get horses gone off at 1 to 4, now they've got less fences to jump, but they're the ones that do get turned over because they're going over fences at a furious gallop. And I know the Gold Cup's still going to be a reasonable size field because they will just have social runners and stuff in there. But touch wood. It's not even going to be like it's a max field of 24 where he's got congestion and horses falling in front of him to deal with. He'll just pop away out the front, won't he? And it should just be plain sailing. But no one needed to watch anyone's preview to be told that Galopin Des Champs, the two-time Gold Cup winner and one of the greatest racehorses of all time, is going to win this. Stick him in a double with Constitution Hill for the all-time greats. That'll do us, won't it? Right, well, we'll move on to the Hunter's Chase, a race that I can certainly plead ignorance in that I don't follow the point-to-point scene in any level of depth. But what I do follow is horses that run in this type of sphere over and over and over again. Salsify was my saving grace one year when Jay Mangan got unshipped by Oscar Delta, and I'd probably had too much going into Salsify. Just in some small models, I told too many people to bet him as well, and luckily he got the job done. But that's probably like an early reminder for me that these are potentially the types of horses that you can get in here. They can be characters, shall we say, and It's on the Line is certainly one of those characters. Will now last year I felt like they got there too soon with him, but with the type of horse like this, you know what you're getting yourself into because he's a law unto himself. Not saying he wins when he wants because sometimes he doesn't want to win, but you know that he's got the ability in the tank. If everything goes his way, he's set a very high bar for horses to surpass. And last year as well, we ran in this, came third. Then he went to Aintree, won at Aintree over 2 mile 5. Then went to Punchtown and won the Punchtown Hunter's Chase there. So as much as he can be a bit in and out, that's a pretty decent level of consistency for a horse that's a bit roguey. So what my stance with him is, I mean, he is 3 to 1 or 100 to 30. I think you can get non-runner money back. It's only 3 places and it's normally a decent sized field, but you get most of your money back if you were to bet him each way. But with him being liable to do something silly, it might as well be nowhere. I'd look at him as a horse that I will bet for this race, not for massive stakes, but I'll definitely bet for this race. I think 3 to 1's juicy. If he'd have run better last time, he'd be sort of 6 to 4ish poke. And then I'll just bet him at Aintree after, and I'll just bet him again at Punchtown because he'll win one of them, and I'll get my money back at some point. But if he wins the Hunter's Chase first time up this year, or of the first of those 3 big festivals, I'd probably draw up stumps. Like he'd be one of those that if I had a bet on him and he won me money, I wouldn't be chasing it after, but I'd happily follow him in for the next couple of runs, if you know what I mean. So good, responsible gambling advice going in there. I think this is one of these races where the Hunter's Chases at any other meeting, I very, 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 very rarely would ever bet in them, unless it's been like an old friend that's now going hunter chasing that I think has got a proper chance. When it gets to these types of ones, though, I do always like to get in there because I think that they're big like targets for these types of horses to go in there. Someone like Emmett Mullins will want redemption from last year, so I think they're much more trustworthy than even I've conveyed. And I still think they can rate as okay-ish betting opportunities. But again, in the pecking order of how many points I'd ever have in a race like this, it would be very lowly. Like I would never be going over 1 or a couple of points in a race like this. But surely It's on the Line will win this year, wouldn't he, Will?
Well, I think he's got a tougher rival than he's ever had, actually, even though he's got beat in the race last year, and that's in the shape of Angel's Dawn. If you look back through her form, I mean, she was going very well in the Kim Muir last year when she came down 2 out. She obviously wouldn't have beaten, I know the way you're thinking, but probably would have been a clear second. That was off the back of an excellent run in third in the Thyestes, one of the bigger staying handicaps over in Ireland. So translating all that form, she's a festival winner as well. Don't forget, she won the Kim Muir the year before, beating Stumptown. So in terms of quality at this particular meeting, the fact that she's been aimed at the race, she's had 2 point-to-point wins to qualify her for the race. The one final piece of the jigsaw would be soft ground. I do think she's a lot better on a softer surface. So if it came up fast on Gold Cup Day, that would, I'd be wary, definitely. But I think she's a class act in a field where you often have one or two class acts, but then some that aren't, with all due respect. So I think she's the best horse in the race, even better than It's on the Line.
Ooh, and the good thing with her is you can trust her to go through with it as well, can't you? So you can imagine it's like a ding-dong battle between those two. Yeah, I mean, it probably is as easy as that. Like I said, there will be better judges out there that would know this race in depth, but I think even those people, there's only so confident they could be about it. Quite a few good judges did put up this side nominee that won the race last year, and obviously they got paid, but I still think they got paid because It's on the Line got beat. And if you're making your case off the back of, well, this is only going to win because the other one's not going to try hard enough, it becomes a bit loose. At least there with Angel's Dawn, you've said that you think she's the best horse in the race. She'll get £7 as well, wouldn't she? Or do they not for point?
Do they? No, I'm not. Yeah, I think they would do. Yeah.
This is bad, isn't it?
I mean, the thing is, we don't have the entries out for this race either. That and the bumper haven't actually confirmed the entries as yet. So
they'll be there, though. They'll definitely be there. But anyway, we've given the first and the second favourite for the Hunters Chase, but it pays even money, or just over that. Probably pays about 5 4 6 4 if you back the pair. So yeah, one of those races. And again, I guess the people that are watching this type of stuff, unless you've never been involved in the Cheltenham Festival before, you'll be aware that this is somewhat of a novelty race. That sounds really offensive to all the people that treat it as a good type one. But from the betting perspective, we've got 28 races. This would be in the bottom couple or few for me as a punter. Right, we'll move on to the final race of the Cheltenham Festival. Not a novelty race in the slightest. Sorry to the Hunter Chase fans out there. The Conditional Jockeys Handicap Hurdle, the Martin Pipe, the race that. It's not really the getting out stakes, because if you've got yourself in a hole by now, then you probably want to just stay in the hole. But it is a race that a lot of people do try and get out in, because every year there's about 4 or 5 horses that get smashed in this one. And I watch it quite often because Betfair's obviously pretty good with their percentage overrun. It sort of levels itself out. But I watch so many bookie sites where there's so many different horses being backed, and the percentage just goes up and up and up because they just everything shortens and they never push anything else back out. So it's one of those that you have to be mindful of that I don't know whether they criminally get away with a really bad overround. And I'm saying that without any real based evidence, but obviously bet responsibly. We're doing this stuff early. If you want to get involved early, but don't just feel like after the Gold Cup you've got to go chasing in a Martin Pipe. But Kopek de Mee, that's been mentioned multiple times, I think this is the race for him. There's been lots of these types of horses. Key to Bourbon last year, I know it's a very different type, but the right sort of profile of a horse that comes here, runs well but doesn't win. There's a few of those types of horses that go and do that. Even Waterford Whispers last year was well backed and didn't get the job done. And then Better Days Ahead that did win it was sort of touted for a Martin Pipe earlier in the season, had already been supported. So you get the gambles essentially all finishing in and around the frame. There are every now and again a bit of a big price one. Indefatigable, that one for Paul Webber, managed to sneak in at 145. Sometimes you can get that type of horse where they are, I guess, established enough to go and win the race. As much as people like to look at these novices, experience can be really helpful when it comes to a race like this. That's where Woodoo comes in with her experience, but I don't think she's that good. I don't feel like she's got bundles in hand, but she is a mare that's just notching up a sequence now. Gordon Elliott has name checked this race for her, so you can see why she is where she is in the market. But I think she's going to have an almost impossible task off of 136 to feel like in a typical Martin Pipe, there aren't at least 5 or 6 horses that have got more in hand than she has. So I'm sort of against her. East India Express is interesting for Nicky Henderson because he's been really good under Freddie Gordon for those 2 runs. There were 2 quick wins, weren't they? And then he's going to bring him into this race. But I feel like he might have already done his winning. So I'm sort of away from him, although he would be on my shortlist. The one that I've got on my shortlist that I will bet if he runs in here is Beat the Bat for Harry Fry, because the 2 mile 5 that he's in for the Coral Cup might be a bit too much of a test. In a race like this, I think he's a straightforward enough horse, and he's a horse that will appreciate the step up in trip. And I do think he's better than his mid 130s mark as well. So he's I think the type of horse that's got a 2.5 mile handicap hurdle in him. Whether he's got quite enough in hand for him to be a Martin Pipe winner, I don't know. But if Harry Fry's brave enough to send him into this race, that I think would be a little bit of a nod to the fact of his chance. The other one that's really interesting is Bunting, that was pretty well fancied for the Triumph last year. He made a bit of an error. He made an error last time out. I think it was at Clonmel, where Paul Townend almost unseated. He lost his irons for a little bit as well. Not that that's like majorly relevant. I'm not saying they were intentionally doing that for coming in this race, but even if he'd have won that race because he was a favourite, I don't think his mark would have been affected too much. But it will be the first time that he steps up in trip. So again, with Willie Mullins sending certain types of horses here, it normally is his more fancied ones that go well. But I thought Bunting, being a 5-year-old, normally those juveniles from the previous year will do benefit when they step up in trip. He's got a bit of back class about him, considering he was sent off, I think, only 11-2 for a Triumph last year. He's rated 135 at the moment. If the UK handicappers light on him and he gets in for the sort of high 130s, I could see every reason why they might decide to run him in here, unless Willie Mullins knows that Kopek Demi just wins this race. So, Will, first and foremost, do you think Kopek Demi comes in, or do you not care where he goes, really?
I don't really care, Dave. If I'm honest, I think he's one of those. I'll look through his French runs and try and make some kind of an assessment, but it's just it's a guessing game, really, for me. I'm hoping that whatever race he runs in, he does get really well backed, because hopefully it will just provide bigger value options about other horses that I know a bit more about. It might be that I was fighting a losing battle in trying to, back against him, but as a punter, you've got to try and swim against the tide a bit, I think, sometimes. In terms of this race, it's, again, lots of multiple entries in here, similar to the Coral Cup. But this being a 145 ceiling, you'll probably know that there are certain horses who are being campaigned in here. Of the UK potentials, there was one that I thought was vaguely interesting, Electric Mason for Chris Gordon, who might have a bit of a fight on with Nicky Henderson to secure the services of his son, Freddie Gordon, because Freddie's won the last twice on East India Express. But I'd imagine if Chris Gordon runs this horse here, he'll probably want Freddie on, you'd imagine. So, but he represents that shallow Novices hurdle form. He's run behind the New Lion twice now, but run really well. And he wasn't too far behind Calafet on Vol the time before, who's come out and won the Sydney Banks, obviously, in a quick time. So I think Electric Mason is one that's just flying a little bit under the radar. And there's, again, a whole host of Irish entries. Woodoo, I'd be with you as well. I think a lot of people got excited over the fact that her form got a few boosts with other horses winning in behind from that Mayor's Handicap hurdle at the December meeting at Cheltenham. But I think you could, basically in behind, Joyeuse probably wasn't fully all out that day. Take No Chances, I'm not sure, is a 2.5 mile horse, so probably didn't quite get home. Royal Margot won a really weak listed race, grade 2 race at Warwick the time afterwards. And then behind that, there's nothing come out of that race and run all that well, really. So I think that's just a bit of a red herring, that form line for Woodoo. So I'd prefer Calaconte, actually, of Gordon Elliott's, if she were to go here. I think she's been crying out for a step up in trip for a long while, and she got that at Christmas time at Leopardstown when she cut out a lot of the running and set a strong tempo for July Flower to come through and win. I think Calaconte has been she's been campaigned with the spring in mind, definitely. Now, whether she runs here or not, I don't know. She has a Mayor's Hurdle entry, she has a County Hurdle entry, she has a Coral Cup entry, but I think she'll be on a rating that gets her into this, and I think it's the type of race that she's been long crying out for. So she'd definitely be of interest if she turned up here.
I like that. And yeah, that would be probably a bit more of the profile of a Gordon Elliott horse that he sends in here, in the fact that they've been tried in higher company. Because I think with Better Days Ahead as well last year, like it wasn't trying to make him the handicap horse. They try him in company for whatever reason, it doesn't quite work out, but they know there's more to come, don't they? So going to be very interesting. That'll be one again. Like I said, there'll be loads of market moves, but they'll tell us something, but there'll be about 5 or 6 market moves, and then it's just which one of those bits you want to pay attention to, I guess. Right, Will, we've done it. We've completed the Cheltenham Festival. Thank you very much for your time. We need to give a best bet for Friday, for Gold Cup Day, for the viewers out there. I've made us do it every day, so we'll carry on here. So we've got Triumph, the County, the Mayor's Chase, the Albert Bartlett, the Gold Cup, the Hunter's Chase, or Kopek Demi and the Conditional Jockeys Martin Pipe. It's up to you which one you pick.
Well, of the shorter ones, if it was soft, Angel's Dawn in the Hunter Chase, and bigger priced option Wendigo in the Albert Bartlett each way.
Oh, nice. I'm going to be Team Lalamba for the Triumph, and I think if we're getting anywhere close to 5-2 about him, I think all the the upside is there in his price for the fact of his potential. So I do think Lalamba is going to get us off to a good start in the Triumph. And then I would just mention Jasmine DeVoe again in the Albert Bartlett, just for all that. I think that the price is okay. If the race does cut up and the other clay goes elsewhere, he might end up going off favourite for this race, I think. And 12 to 1, I think he's 12s or 10s, non-runner money back. Might not be the worst thing to do, but hands up, I haven't bet Jasmine DeVoe for this race. I actually did bet him for the Turners earlier in the season. So listen to me at your peril. Right, thank you for watching, especially if you stayed along this long. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for your time doing this, Will. I really do appreciate it. And we will see you all again very soon.